Hello and welcome to CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Paul Hardy. I am the EVP of Professional Service at Ironside. We're a data and analytics consultancy based outside of Boston, as you can see in my background here. And I'm here today with Russ Scoville. He is the VP of Enterprise Data Services at CareSource. Russ, welcome. Glad to be talking with you this afternoon. Have you found in CareSource that advanced analytics, machine learning, AI, that sort of thing is it something that you're phasing into your thoughts about this migration, increasing your use of that kind of technology?
Absolutely. It's one of the primary drivers was how to operationalize that type of AI ML data to have real impacts on the business, and how do we take those lessons that could be learned and build them right into our processes that are happening on the operations side. I think historically a lot of that was sort of deemed aspirational or cool or something that, I'd regularly get executives that says, hey, can AI help us solve this problem about how to get more customers? And like kind of laugh and like, no, not really. And can AI do this? Can AI do that? Well, when you find things that AI can do, it's how do you take that information and embed it right into the processes where it's going to have the most impact, and not just end up as some sort of spreadsheet that gets emailed to someone that disappears.
Right.
Like, which is something that you find in a lot of places, that the absolute coolest stuff is just dying on the table somewhere, and you don't really have a way to trace it back, find out which predictive model, which AI algorithm identified this, and able to calculate the ROI on it, using real information, and then using that as justification to build more. It's completing that whole life cycle around AI and ML that you can take back and show dollars to your business partners. That really, I mean, that's exciting.
Yeah, and it's actually just a challenge with that capability to help those stakeholders develop use cases, right? They don't understand the technology enough to know what AI might be able to do. So that's its own challenge. And then to your point about the governance changes that you're undergoing now, there's a whole different dimension of governance associated with, managing those models and, keeping track of their lineage and their legacy and that sort of thing. I presume that will become increasingly important in the healthcare industry because it's such a highly regulated industry. We see that in financial services quite a bit, right? So the traceability of those models.
Yeah, it's interesting because, data scientists go to school to learn data science. They learn programming techniques. They learn the real value is getting those people partnered up with people that understand the business of how the company makes money and how to extrapolate value out of that. Because, I remember talking to somebody in a medical unit, I'm like, hey, you went to medical school, for 26 years to learn how to be a doctor. My engineer went to college for 4 years to learn how to write code. They don't know everything. They need you to help. It's they have a very different skill set, and it's it's bridging that gap that really allows you to find value.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. That's something that we find in the consulting side of this is, the two biggest sort of initial errors in thought are that defining a use case is something that the data scientist is going to be able to do for you without being right in the pocket of the business person who really understands the ins and outs of the processes and the outcomes. And the other is that the belief that all of your data has to be pristine. I can't tell you how many times we hear things like, well, we're about 2 years away from doing AI, right? If you ever say that, because we want to get our data warehouse, pristine, right? You only need the data that's workable for the use case you're trying to solve, is what we like to say. But yeah. You mentioned earlier, Russ, data catalog. Can you mention whether that's played a significant role, a new role as you move to a cloud environment? Was it something you always did and it's easily transitioned? How do you see the application of a data catalog in your two different states here, before and after?
Before and after, right now in
During,
sort of
I
that
guess.
dual operation mode, it's more of a
Yeah.
during. But giving people a place to go to look up, definitions, and making that available is kind of it new for a lot of companies. It hasn't historically been a big thing, but more and more as I see people coming on board, or partners on our business coming in, they've already got those muscles built, and they walk in and say, hey, where's the data catalog? Can I see the definitions of these metrics in my report? And nobody did that 5 years ago. Nobody did that 10 years ago. That wasn't even a concept. It was just, you assume it's right. You kind of go in with that belief. So, for us, it's been an evolution to have that exposed somewhere where it previously wasn't available.
Mm-hmm. So, Russ, we started this conversation by talking about the fact that you were 60 to 70% of your way through your migration. You've got some time. I think you're targeting the end of 23 or something to kind of complete the project. What do you see ahead of you? What are the last mile challenges now that you still face?
The last mile is the unknown. You're consistently confronted with, that's the way we've always done it, and nobody knows why, and having to figure that out. Definitely the hardest part of it is unraveling, some piece of code that was written a decade ago, converted from system A to system B by some third party, that ended up being a foundational piece of some application that is now lost to the archaeology of time, and having to get the right people to weigh in on what should be happening instead of what is happening. And it involves a lot of, okay, we've dissected what's happening today, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step, and you stop me when you have a question. It's like,
Right.
it's challenging work, and you have to have somebody on the other side who's willing to partner with you to go through that. And then just kind of present options like, hey, we could do it, we could solve the same problem 30 different ways. If we know what the problem is we're trying to solve, it's going to help us get there, because we know how this person solved the problem. We don't know what the problem was. So is that problem still exist today, and do we want to solve it in the same way, or is there a better way that we can approach it now? Whether that's more efficiently, more accurately, more repeatably. Those are the types of questions that you find yourself with. And then, running up against those processes that are so old and baked into an organization that nobody owns them. There's not necessarily, if they own them, it's past ownership 5, 6, 10 times, and nobody ever knew they were the owner, or they find that they're surprised. Oh, I own that? Oh, okay. Let's let's talk about that. It's just one of those things that's always existed.
Yeah. Well, Russ, this was a brief conversation. I appreciate you spending the time. Are there any last lessons you would give someone else in your shoes, or the Russ that you knew 2 years ago?
I would and continue to advocate for building relationships as being critical to the success of any data organization, and building that internal knowledge of your industry as that missing piece and that soft skill that helps give you credibility when you're talking to either peers or coworkers or business partners or third party groups that you're working with. When if everything comes down to, it wasn't explicitly written in the business requirements, then you're not having the right conversation. And it's incumbent on teams learning the business that they're in, not just the how, but the why, that makes all the difference.
Well, thank you, Russ Scoville. We really appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining me. And everyone else, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.